Welcome to the RGLT Economics. Today I want to talk about some of the flashpoints for 2024. Before I begin, I want to answer briefly the question why I haven't been publishing anything recently. And there are three simple reasons. First, I've been busy with some personal stuff. Second, I've been following some sources of news and commentary that I find brilliant, and there is really nothing of value that I can add to them. And two of these sources are System Update by Glenn Greenwald and Judging Freedom by Judge Andrew Napolitano. I find them to be simply brilliant, and I can't recommend them enough. Thirdly, there are some emerging topics that I find just simply too controversial, too dangerous for me to personally actually cover. Nevertheless, I do find it quite necessary to talk about some of the flashpoints for 2024, and some of these issues are included among these flashpoints. So let's go, without further ado, let's go to the main topic today. I've identified three economic flashpoints and four political ones on top that I find quite unnerving, and there is one additional flashpoint, so 8 in total. The first one is inflation. In the last 18 months, thanks to continued efforts in raising the interest rate and actually going beyond a lot of the analysts and indeed the consensus in the financial industry was expecting, the Federal Reserve was able to have inflation somewhat under control. It's not fully under control. It's still way above the target rate of 2% inflation, which already is insane, because I think you want 0% inflation or close to 0% inflation in order to maintain the best functioning of your economy and avoid the accumulation of debt. But they have nevertheless caused what is called disinflation, which is, I think, a term created to make the illusion that it's somewhat related to deflation. Actually, it's not. Disinflation simply means a deceleration of inflation, which doesn't actually mean much. Nevertheless, with the dovish pivot that's been signaled last month, I think going into this election season, the entire 2024, we will see continued rate cuts and an expansion on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. That means that inflation will pick up again in the United States. And inflation has always been a problem in the United States, although nominally America was able to narrowly avoid a recession last year. This, I think, is just simply an accounting trick because I think it's mostly debt, not necessarily economic growth. It's mostly inflation, not economic growth. But they were able to fudge the data such that it appears that America avoided a recession. But I think the American people and people in general globally know better, because the Americans, they are living through this period themselves. They know how difficult the situation has become, and they know the Bidenomics is not a success. However, the Biden's media friends claim it to be. In the Eurozone, we have seen just simply continued fall in living standards. Inflation has been a problem. The availability of goods has been a problem, and the competitiveness is a continued problem, and it's not seeing the day of any resolution. There is simply no promise, no prospect at this point. But in 2024, I think the situation will worsen because of more inflation and because of the other two factors that flashpoints that I will mention. And I think these will continue together created a situation whereby the global economy will find it very difficult to grow in 2024. And for most people, they will experience some economic not necessarily personally experience economic difficulties, but they will see that their economic prospect will be less good or worse than it was before. And for many people, they will be worse off, and they will go through some period of economic hardship. The second flashpoint is energy. In the last few decades, especially the last decade, energy transition has been a very hot topic. I personally am not a follower of this cult of climate catastrophe narrative. I don't think, yes, of course, the climate is changing. And yes, human activities are a contributing factor, but it's only a contributing factor. There is, I think, this anthropocentric view that humans are just above nature, and that we are causing a lot more to nature than we are the driving force on Earth. But the reality is that we are only a contributing force in this. But nevertheless, I do see the point of energy transition, not necessarily because of global warming or some other climate-related issues, but really about pollution and also about the long-term availability of energy, because the fossil fuel is not renewable, so that in due time it will run out. We need to find new sources of energy that are cheaper to produce, that are more available, and that will support economic growth for the next century or centuries to come. So it's very important, right? But at the current time, we're not there yet, and making some political declarations and making some some rush decisions actually disrupts the transition, right? Basically, perhaps some governments may be leading us towards a technology that they currently see promising, but actually will not be the correct answer for the future. And by simply betting on this source of energy, it distorts this energy transition, actually makes it worse. That is not what I'm concerned about, actually. What I'm more concerned about is the narrative that has come out from some government officials in the West that suggest that they initiate some campaign to destroy energy production currently in the world, particularly in the Middle East. I'm not going to say particularly where, but you know where. They want to destroy the energy production. They want to make it. They want to just simply presumably what they did a couple of years ago in destroying the energy delivery system from Russia, between Russia and Europe. They want to now destroy some of the energy production facilities. Now, energy delivery systems like pipelines and energy production like wells, these things, and oil fields, etc., and refineries, they take a lot of time and capital to build. These are not perfectly elastic, right? This type of productivity. So, but at the same time, demand is also somewhat inelastic. There is continued demand for energy by the industries and by people, for cooking, for heating, etc., for transportation, etc. That by destroying a large proportion of the world's available fossil fuel production capacity, is what these people are proposing is destroying the prospect of global economic growth for the foreseeable future. Is what they are proposing is a huge energy crisis that can see energy prices double or triple in the coming years. This is a very dangerous idea, but this idea has been talked publicly in recent months, and we can see that there is a risk that these initiatives could be carried out. On the one hand, the Biden administration or Biden regime certainly don't want this sort of thing to take place, even though they want to talk tough, because I think Biden, I don't want to say that Biden is on the driver's seat, but people in his administration should know that if these things take place, inflation will be so high that the prospect of Biden's re-election is perhaps just simply should be completely eradicated. Even if Trump is only on the ballots of 25 states, Biden will not be elected. Because people will vote for whomever rather than Biden in that scenario. So, but at the same time, Biden has political enemies, and there are people who are inside and outside the United States who do not want to see a continuation of the current policies, and they may see the destruction of a lot of the energy production in some countries. I'm not going to name them, but they may see that as a means to achieve their political initiative. And even if, let's say, these people have been making these, expressing these opinions, they are, of course, American officials. You don't need the government, the official policy to be such for this initiative to be carried out. Just like the presumed bombing of this pipeline a couple of years ago. It's allegedly was determined by a small handful of people in the Biden circle. Likewise, it could be simply a small group of people in that guy's circle that goes about to carry out this initiative, and everyone will be only reacting, right? So that's something that is very concerning, because to build capacity, you need a lot of collaboration, you need a lot of investment, but to destroy a capacity, you only need a small group of people who are national or not supranational or even individual actors. These actors with maybe not even goals on the national level, perhaps only in pursuit of personal power or money or profit. They could do that, and this is very dangerous. The third thing is shipping. Of course, in recent weeks, we are seeing that a blockade on the Red Sea is really disrupting shipping between Asia and Europe. And of course, the goal is to disrupt shipping to Israel. Fine. But this reminds us again of the power of blockade in the strategic choke points. And there are just a handful of choke points. Malacca Strait, Panama Canal, Suez Canal, right? The Gibraltar, just a very few. And also the Strait of Hormuz and the Dardanelles. Just a handful of those choke points. And it doesn't necessarily need you don't need a strong military to be able to impose this type of blockade. We see that last week, America was pulling out its carrier group from the Mediterranean. I think the reason allegedly, is because the destroyers have fired out, had already fired not all their missiles, but a significant proportion of their anti-air missiles, so that they can't stay, the carrier group can't stay in the Mediterranean within harm's way at the moment, because if some actors decide to do a swarm attack, they will with cheap drones, the carriers could be at peril, right? They will not have enough anti-air defense to at that point, and that could be a huge loss of military material and of the credibility of face for the United States. That's why they are pulling out. And so what I'm saying in this is that what the Houthis are doing now, yes, it's having an economic effect, it's having a political effect, but at the same time, it also is, I think, showing a lot of the small groups, actually groups large and small, the power of a blockade. And I think once lessons from these activities are learned by a lot of people, there will be similar efforts that take place, maybe not at the aforementioned tier 1 choke points in shipping, but there are some regional shipping lanes that can see a lot of trouble, that can experience a lot of trouble. That's something that we need to pay attention to as well. And of course, with energy production and with shipping, again, these feed back to inflation, and they conspire to create an environment whereby economic growth in 2024 is very difficult to come by. Compound upon that, the burst of the housing bubble in China. This completely, I think the government has finally given up hope that this bubble would not burst. I think they are now trying to do it in a more controlled way. A good signal of that is that it's basically everyone is basically free to talk about the decline in housing prices now. Just 12 months ago, if you talk about the decline in housing prices, you will not be able to publish this type of commentary. But right now, it's a fact that it's broadly acknowledged by everyone. It's no longer controversial, and so you can talk about it. But of course, it's no longer meaningful to talk about it. Everyone knows that the bubble has burst, and it's going to be an L-shaped recovery, meaning there won't be a recovery. And this combination of this and high levels of debt and very adversarial global economic environment, economic growth in China will be somewhat hard to come by too. And so there is really no economic engine for growth in 2024. So we should be fully prepared for a year where there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of hardship, and it is really the political issues that will determine when and indeed whether there will actually, I don't think whether there will be economic growth again is I doubt, but when the economic growth will come back, when peace will come back, that's is going to be determined this year and the next. So now let's move on to some of the political flashpoints. The fourth point, quite important, is the election, the November election in the United States. I know for a global audience, election in a country, especially a country that proclaims itself to be a democracy but actually isn't that interesting. It is theatrical, but at the same time, beneath beneath the theatrics, there is a lot of interests at play. And as the United States is such an influential player on the global stage, and as the American politicians and the American public at large are somewhat, what's the word, maverick about foreign interference, they will export their domestic policy. They will project their domestic politics externally, and it's never a good thing. It hasn't been a good thing. They so we will be. I think it's quite certain that both sides, or perhaps all sides, will play dirty. We already see that Democrats are playing dirty, using their friends in the media, and also they are already trying to disqualify Trump using all sorts of reasons, citing the 14th Amendment, Section 3, even though it's very clear that Donald Trump has never engaged in any insurrection, and there hasn't been an insurrection in the United States in the last century, or at least in the last few years. Certainly there hasn't been an insurrection. So this simply, it does not apply. But nevertheless, they are quoting this amendment in order to disqualify their opponent. This also, they have been prosecuting Trump left and right, using all sorts of excuses. At the same time, we must not pretend that the Republicans are so much cleaner. They will use their dirty tricks for sure. And so what's really concerning is that, you see, Bill Clinton, because of some personal affairs, bombed Serbia, Yugoslavia for 45 days, right? And there was no immense personal, political, or economic reason to do so. It's only because of his personal affairs. He needed a distraction, and also he needed to please his wife. That's all there is to it. Now, in this case, currently, there's a lot at stake. A lot of positions and power are at stake. Imagine what some ruthless people can do to other unsuspecting countries if bombing someone can actually help their chances out. At least if they believe that bombing some people can help their chances, they will commit atrocious crimes to achieve that. Sorry. So the election is the first political flashpoint. The second political flashpoint is the stability in the Middle East. This is another thing that is quite perplexing. You see, in the past, normally political leaders, when committing atrocities in war, they want to pretend that they are unaware of atrocities being taken place. When they carry out a policy that is atrocious, that is appalling to the public, to the outside, they don't review this to the outside. Even in the Third Reich, they were talking about the superiority of themselves and the need to find some sort of solution to some problems, but they are exactly how it's carried out is actually kept somewhat a secret. Because they did not trust that their population would be so supportive if humanity was at stake. But currently, it seems like some people believe that they need to express their belief. They need to openly detail how they want to carry out the atrocities. They want to show the world where the bodies are buried, and they want to show the world that they not only have the capacity and willingness to do this sort of things, but they document it with video evidence and publish it for everyone's for everyone to see. This is really a perplexing combination of strategy. It's of course, some people have been saying that this is because they want to show that they have this ability. They want to inject fear in their enemies so that their superiority, or their safety rather, will no longer be challenged. But the question that I have, and I think a lot of people have expressed, is that whether this is a rational strategy, whether fear can stop a nation from revolting. And I think to some extent, fear used internally could work. But it's always a carrot and stick approach, I think. You can't only use stick without the carrot. And that is mostly used internally. Externally, this is a really strange approach. I don't know any, I'm not a great historian. I don't know any historic precedents where this has been rather successful. Indeed, I think it has been documented, and I think a lot of people from centuries ago, strategists have expressed the belief that for prosperity and safety for a nation, it is important that you keep a very safe border with good, friendly relationships with your neighbors. And indeed, it is my belief that if all your neighbors are friendly and highly prosperous, very highly successful, that is the best circumstances, best condition for you to be safe and prosperous. On the other hand, if all your neighbors hate you and all your neighbors are poor, destitute, unstable, their society unstable, you will have economic difficulties. You will see a lot of military incursions. You will experience terrorism. That seems very, very simple to understand, but it is strange that some very powerful officials in a very successful country could hold a completely different view. I don't know. I guess I'm mistaken in here. But one point that I haven't heard a lot of people express, but I think actually 2 points. One point I've heard a lot of people express, but another point I haven't. The first point is that we will not go back to the status quo ante in the Middle East. The bonds were severed. The diplomatic relationships were severed. Trust is gone. And animosity is built to a level that is, I think, unseen in a century. So that part is I think is already determined. But another part, one step further, that a lot of people, I think, are afraid to say. But I think perhaps it's really an ancillary of the first point, which is that going forward, there are only two possible outcomes. Either there's going to be a decade-long conflict that is continuous, that will see everyone in the region worse off, and stability will not come back. Safety will not be earned by anyone, and not least the one that is so confident about their strategy today. That's one outcome. Another outcome is that there could be a peace, but only when the map is redrawn to that of 100 years ago, and that would not be an outcome that that is desired by people who are doing this now. It's very perplexing, right? They will draw in more countries into this military conflict. And this is really strange, really strange. I don't know any precedent where an empire or a kingdom wants to have a three-front war, a four-front war. I don't know. It's very strange, very strange. But that's the situation that we have to reckon with. The sixth point, Eastern Europe, Ukraine. I think there's enough that has been said about Ukraine. But one thing that I want to say is that it appears that Russia is finally having some more decisive victory, and indeed people in the West are finally coming to realize that there is no hope for Ukraine. Even though from the very beginning, the first week, it was clear from the very beginning that there was no hope for Ukraine. And Ukraine's position has worsened continually because, you see, because Ukraine had no prospect of winning on the military front, the best it could hope for was a political resolution. And it was quite fortunate that all Russia wanted was a political resolution. So this war, after the first couple of days, was completely unnecessary because they could already directly go to the political resolution, and they will have a ceasefire, a treaty, and all peace would resume. Of course, they may not be so happy that they were once invaded by Russia. And of course, I think the relationship, the trust, the bond between Ukraine and Russia will be disrupted and to a large extent destroyed, damaged. But there will hundreds of thousands of people will be alive, and millions. There won't be so many millions or tens of millions of people displaced, and the country's infrastructure will not be devastated. The Ukrainian nation would have a much better, much brighter future. But that didn't happen. They continued to fight. Of course, this was at led by the Biden regime and Boris Johnson, right? So the question that I want to ask is whether the Ukrainian leadership believed what the Biden regime and the Brits and the West promised them. And this is quite consequential. If they really believed this, the promise of the West, we could see a last-ditch effort, because right now they will be disillusioned somewhat, they will be devastated, but they would be desperate. So desperate that they may try something just unexpected. I think it is not quite possible, but not outside the realm of possibility that they will do some type of nuclear incident. They don't necessarily, I don't know, maybe they have, but maybe they don't have nuclear weapons, but they certainly have a lot of nuclear power plants and a lot of nuclear materials, and they can incite some nuclear incident that will have supranational international consequences, because the waste can blow with the wind either to Central Asia or to Western Europe, and a lot of people will have their lives, their health directly at the mercy of the decision of these desperate leaders in Ukraine. And they may do this simply in an attempt to join NATO or America in particular in a direct confrontation with Russia. On the other hand, it is also possible that the Ukrainian leadership was not so naive that they did not believe the promise of America, but they still fought on because it was such a good business deal. In that case, I think they would simply retreat to Miami or somewhere similar and enjoy however many days or months they have left in their lives. I don't know, but that's something that we need to be very concerned about, because it is the last days of a failing regime where it is the most desperate, and a lot can happen. Seventh, of course, there is the issue of Taiwan. There's very little to be said, because the Taiwan situation is quite analogous to the situation in Ukraine, except I think in the eyes of the Americans, Taiwan is strategically more important than Ukraine, and in the eyes of the Americans. And this is not just the neocons, but actually beyond the neocons. For example, I listened to a podcast on judging freedom with John Mearsheimer today, and he expressed this opinion again, that China indeed is a very important foe of the United States, strategic foe, and that the United States should do whatever it can to contain China. I think strategists who are not neoconservatives don't think the same for Russia, because rightly or wrongly, and I think mostly rightly, Russia does not pose a threat to America in any sense, right? It's not because economically, Russia is quite complementary to Western Europe. It can be a large hinterland of Europe, providing resources and a little bit of market, and its oligarchs can. A lot of people don't like to. Well, essentially the oligarchs, they will provide also funds, capital. So it's actually very good relationships for Western Europe to incorporate Russia. And Russians want to be Europeans. They want to be welcomed to the European family. They don't actually identify with the Asians, and I don't blame them. They're culturally European, even though their history is not really so European. It's quite unique. But they want to be European. They aspire to be European, but they are not allowed to be European. That's a big disappointment for the Russians. But nevertheless, Russians didn't pose a big threat to Western civilization or Western hegemony. China, on the other hand, is different. It's culturally different. And even though a lot of the Chinese also want the same things, they want better life, higher living standards. They want, actually, I think most Chinese people want freedom. They don't necessarily want a political system or a social structure exactly the same like the United States, but they also don't want anything that is in direct confrontation or contradiction to what the Americans want and need. But there is a big conflict of interest, because for America to be the dominant player in the world, for America to be able to go around the world and abuse whomever it wants to, it needs to be able to dominate everybody, and it does not want a peer competitor. And in that sense, China poses a big threat. And unlike it is the case with the Russians, which Americans consider white. They consider Chinese people an inferior race. A lot of people do, but of course this is something that is only thought of but not stated. But they consider the Chinese an inferior people, but and this further angers them, right? They see someone, a people that is inferior, become a peer competitor and perhaps even dominate them. And this is where I think John Mearsheimer was wrong, because John Mearsheimer claims, repeatedly so, and which is why I think he is not so much different than the neoconservatives, except that he is more realistic. He is not so ideological, but he holds one belief, which is that a nation, given the opportunity, would want to dominate others. And this is something that is peculiar. I think actually it is only the United States who has done this before. Throughout history, of course, as I said, I'm not a great historian, but there are always the empires that I've come to know always have some limits. In the Roman Empire, I know the Romans extracted themselves from Britain because Britannia was such a losing proposition. It was semi-stable, but they were losing money from Britannia, so they retreated from Britannia because maybe it's called Britannica. Anyway, it's Britain, right? Because that province was not making money. They were spending so much money to build it up, but they were not making any money from it, so they did not want to go there. They didn't want to stay there, and they didn't go to a lot of the Central Europe and Eastern Europe, not because they were unable to, but because they find that proposition unprofitable. They only wanted to go to places where it is profitable to do so. America is different. For the Americans, it seems like there is no war that it does not like, and it seems like there is no place where it does not see a reason for itself to get involved in, even though in most cases it is a losing proposition. So it is really in the American psyche, the American mentality to dominate everyone. Whereas for most people, it seems to me that yes, they want to have influence, and particularly influence in their neighboring regions. And I can understand nations around the South China Sea, for example, and in the East China Sea, Japan and Korea in particular, they may be concerned about the rise of China and the Chinese influence. Especially in the case of Korea, we know that Korea was a subordinate nation for China for centuries, right? So it may be wary and with good cause. But for the rest of the world, I don't see China being actually a threat. For the United States, it's actually completely irrational. It's a losing proposition. But America will not extricate itself from this affair because it's already there and it wants to dominate. And so unless this thing is resolved, and I don't think this thing will be resolved in the years to come, this will continue to be a flashpoint. And finally, there is something that is unforeseen. So the last flashpoint is something that is unforeseen. We know that there are dangers that we know, and there are things that we know. There are things we know we don't know, and then there are unforeseen things that we don't know. These are ambiguous things. And I've been watching a lot of air crashes videos recently, and the common theme is that at the heat of the moment, when the pilot is overwhelmed with events, with emergencies, when there are some faults in the plane, when the conditions are harsh, they are overwhelmed, they're startled, they no longer follow their training, their procedure, their experience no longer mean anything, and they make mistakes. Political leaders are humans too. When under immense time pressure, when they suddenly encounter events that are quickly unfolding in front of them, they may be running. They may be running simply to actually to stay still behind events, and they may make rushed decisions. They will take actions without corresponding with their partners. They will not coordinate with their foes well, and so things can escalate very quickly. And this also is something that could be quite dangerous, especially as the first 7 flashpoints that I have mentioned, they conspire to make it a very stressful, very complex situation for a lot of the nations in 2024. All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.